So say, for example, this is a group of college students conducted a survey, the impact of remote learning on student well-being. So this was, say, a survey, but this could also be one of the questions on an interview for the scenario. Can you describe your overall experience with remote learning during the past academic year? So if I interviewed 15 people, which is a lot of people to interview, you probably won't do that many. These are all of the answers that came up when that question was asked, for example, in an interview. So now what we need to do is we need to review what was actually said, and now we need to start to analyze those details. So how I do it, I start in, or if we're going to Affinity map, I start with a file in Miro, and then I go and I take my data point. So here is one data point. So I'm going to just go ahead and copy that, and I'll paste that on there. So I start off by literally just putting all of the data points in here. I won't do all of these for the purpose of the exercise, but just for a nice example. So there we go. Say I interviewed 4 people, and these are the data points that were on that question. You don't need to specifically put the question on there because a lot of your questions are going to probably end up turning up what the pain points are, what their motivation is, etc. And then you start to organize them after. So what we do here is I'm going to look at this first point. When I'm organizing this, I don't need all of these details. Like everything that's coming up here, I found remote learning to be very isolating. I missed the face-to-face. So if I just want to grab the most relevant detail and the relevant point of what this person is answering when it comes to remote learning, what would I grab from this one? Shannon?
I feel like you would grab isolating and like maybe missed face to face.
100%. I would personally just grab isolating because missing the face-to-face, I mean, you're still saying isolating, but I know I can hear what you're saying from a sense of if you want to get into the specific as to why they felt isolated was that. So in this instance, if it's just isolating, I would personally just take this. There's my one reason why they don't like it. It's isolating. Now from here, what do we think about this one? It was convenient not having to commute, but I struggled with staying motivated and focused during online lectures. Anybody else? Come on, Shannon.
Struggle motivating.
Yep. Struggling to motivate. This one's a trick one. The reason why it's a trick one, you did get it, but because here is one answer, but we actually, in fact, have 2 data points here because they're kind of saying 2 sides of the coin on this one. What they're saying is it was convenient, but they also struggled to stay motivated and focused. So what I would do in this instance, I would take this one and break it into 2. So a plus is that it was motivating, but a negative point is that struggle with staying motivated and focused. So now, what are we seeing so far here? We start to see a theme of pain points. And then we start to see, oh, here's like a pleasure point, a good point. So let's take this one. I felt overwhelmed with the amount of screen time and the lack of physical activity. Did I get 2 on there?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, it was this one? Let's just fix that. Whoops. So I felt overwhelmed with the amount of screen time and the lack of physical activity. So here's now a point. And you don't need to maybe quite organize them as I was doing before. I depends on maybe the mood you might be in. Sometimes I'll go and I'll like abbreviate them first and then I'll move them around. But sometimes I'll just go, okay, well, this is a pain point, so I'll put that one there. more flexible, which is great for balancing the school and work. So there's a plus. Technical issues were a constant problem and made attending class and completing assignments frustrating. So we start to see I could potentially break this one up into two. Overwhelming the amount of screen time, a lack of physical activity. I know it came from one person, but there are technically 2 points there. So you could put these together. So now what we're doing is we're starting to theme and group and categorize our data points. So as we start to do this, pardon me, then we start to give them a name. So we can actually call this pain points. I don't really know what to call this. We'll say positives. And as we start doing this, you're going to end up with several more categories. Or as you start doing this, under pain points, you might find some subcategories. So there's something technical, motivation, isolating. Maybe a few people talk about like the physical point of it. I mean, it's a little bit cut and dry, but then what you can also do is, let's call this group one because I don't really know because they're all pretty similar right now. We'll call this technical. Because maybe a lot of people say technical issues were a constant problem. Maybe someone else terms that in another way. So we're going to keep plunking it in. And now we start to see all of that data. So we have several pain points. Maybe we have several positives. And maybe we talk about, again, this is just one question. So it's tough to break this into several things. But maybe someone then talks about, maybe we're talking about what motivates them. So you start to categorize and group all that data. I personally like to I like to add some lines in there to separate those points. So because this is from a survey and we're just gathering a bunch of data from one question, if, for example, this is an interview, this is going to be much bigger. Because if you think of how many questions you're going to ask and how much data each question is going to give you, times at least maybe 3 people, there's going to be a lot. So what we tend to do when we are first interviewing is, or analyzing that interview data. So for participant 1, I'm going to have all of their data points on yellow. Participant 2, I'm going to have all their data points on pink. You'll find a way that you want to organize things. So let me just do this. So again, I would personally start with getting all of that data on here. It's going to look like a big mess. Participant 1. Another thing about that, we never refer to our interviewees as their name. They're always anonymous, and we always refer to them as participant 1, or if you're writing it, you could say P1, P2, P3, etc. So say participant 1, I've got there's a whole bunch more on here. Here's everything this person said during the interview. So I got everything on there. Now I have participant 2. A whole bunch more here. But what I would do is or what is generally done, oops. We change this to another color and then say participant 3. We would go and we would change those to another color. So then what happens is we start now. Oh, now we're going to gather all of this data on our one page, and then we start to organize. I usually still like to keep them separate. It's just I'm weird like that and how I tend to work. So I keep my separate data points together. I also hate that they're jumbled like this. I keep things really organized and straight and together because it drives me crazy when they're not. So now we start to group. And then same thing with this one. So now if this is my pain point section, you're going to start to see them. So it does turn into a big giant mess. But it's a really, really great visual way to gather all of the most important relevant pieces and start to categorize in theme, because now we can see there's clearly more pain points than positives in this platform we are interviewing, or this platform we are investigating. Is there any questions on this, which is affinity mapping? Does it seem interesting?
It does. Sorry, I missed the part a couple times. You just made little rectangles for the post-its, or it's like a
Post-its are just right here.
selection?
So they call them post-its or a sticky note.
Oh, they do stay.
On-
Okay, okay. I thought it was okay, and you can
You
pick the
literally just
color in
click
it.
and then you could
Okay,
type. But if you're
perfect.
gathering your data points that would most likely be in another document, then you would you can kind of like copy
Copy
paste.
paste.
So like I
Yep.
said, especially like when you're just like, I just want to get all the data on there, I'll quickly go and like throw a whole paragraph on there and throw everything. And then I go in and go, okay, so what's the most relevant? You're like, I don't need all that fluff of like, sometimes I like to blah, 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 sometimes can be a good word. But then I go in and I start to separate that. Cool. Okay.